Hey, welcome back. In today's episode, I'm going to give you a run through of the latest 8 ways scammers will go after users' crypto in 2025. A deepfake scam uses AI generated video or audio to impersonate trusted figures such as family members, CEOs, or influencers in order to trick victims into sending cryptocurrency or revealing sensitive information. The next one on the list is too good to be true investments, typically those forex trading platforms. Scammers posing as savvy investment managers promise sky-high returns if you just send them some crypto first. It's a classic social engineering tactic dressed up as a financial opportunity. Now, these scammers usually have legitimate looking websites or well-designed apps using fancy investing jargon to seem real. But in reality, if you look back in May 2025, there's an example case of this unfortunate incident where a resident of Warriewood in Australia has reported a loss of nearly $64,000 to a cryptocurrency investment scam. In 2025, DeFi rug pulls are a growing form of cryptocurrency scam where developers of a decentralized finance project suddenly withdraw all user funds and disappear, leaving investors with worthless tokens. These scams are becoming more complex to detect with tactics such as honeypot tokens, where malicious smart contracts prevent users from actually selling the tokens that they've purchased, and multi-wallet control strategies to evade detection. The next one, which I think we're all familiar with, we know what phishing is a classic scam that's now widespread, unfortunately, in the crypto world. It's used to compromise login credentials, such as crypto wallet keys, those seed phrases that I've been ranting on about. Usually scammers send an official looking email that asks the victim to log into their account, which is actually a trap. So you got an actual phishing email example here, but I'm sure that this is one of the old classic scam techniques that we're all familiar with. False giveaways. A crypto giveaway scam is when fraudsters pose as a legit cryptocurrency exchanges, businesses, or notable individuals to deceive victims into sending them cryptocurrency. You might have come across a fake YouTube video from Michael Saylor, the CEO of Strategy, giving examples of this false giveaway. So fraudsters are growingly using this false giveaway technique to impersonate prominent public figures to actually deceive their scam. Right? They typically promise to return double or triple the amount sent by the victim, only to vanish when the funds are actually received. This is a classic scam. Pig buttering is a long-term scam where fraudsters build trust, often through romance and social networking, before convincing a victim to invest in fake crypto platforms. Once the victim has deposited significant funds, the scammer disappears, taking all the money. It's called this way because scammers fatten up their victims with attention and trust before slaughtering them by stealing their funds. The next one, we've seen this throughout the crypto industry, is those pump and dump schemes. This is the oldest trick in the book. You blow up the hype, sell at the top, and then vanish before the crash. In pump and dumps, fraudsters artificially inflate the value of a crypto asset by generating fake hype, often through social media, to create the illusion of high demand. The next one on the list is crypto drainers. A crypto drainer is a malicious script or a smart contract designed to steal cryptocurrency directly from users' wallets by tricking them into connecting their wallets and unknowingly authorizing transactions that transfer the funds to the attacker. I want to go through just a glimpse of how you can detect crypto scams in 2025, because the more we can learn, the more we can protect ourselves against these threats. So the first one on the list is promises of guaranteed returns. We just talked about anything that is too good to be true, you should just automatically treat that as a red flag. The next one is lack of documentation and transparency, particularly those that are personating themselves as a legit forex trading platform. Usually there are ways to detect how new those websites have been in existence and how many visitors they might have received. But usually the best way is to check with your financial regulator to see if they have been licensed to operate in your jurisdiction in the country where you reside. No verifiable company registration or licensing. I just mentioned that and the way to do that. through your financial regulator or your company house registrar. I know in the UK they have one, and you can just simply check on their details on that registrar. But in addition to that, always refer to your financial regulator. Another red flag is the pressure to make a decision quickly. Usually the tactic of scammers is they keep calling you just to entice you to send them the cryptos to their designated wallets. So whenever there is a pressure that is quite exaggerated, again, that is the usual red flag that you ought to just simply discard and report to the authorities. You also get a lot of cold calls and messages. This is nothing new. You get also fake websites that are unverifiable. Again, the classic way to check that is how new those websites have been set up and been operating. There are different ways to check that. The next one is token or coin has no utility or purpose. Again, these are usually pump and dump cryptos or even crypto airdrops, because again, that is another potential way to inflate the value of their crypto holdings, and then they just run away with the money. I have seen that in operation quite a lot. So anything that is pump and dump crypto airdrops, you need to take that as a pinch of salt and do your research. And if in doubt, you discard and just follow up with your local authorities to see if they have any further insight as to the legitimacy of those new cryptocurrencies that they've approached you with. The next one on the list is the inability to withdraw funds. This is important because it's all good and well to send them the crypto funds to their platform, but if you're unable to withdraw funds, that is a red flag. And also be wary, if you send an amount and then they give you a small amount back, that is still a red flag, because I have seen instances where they attempt to prove you that you can withdraw the funds, but in reality they tend to be very, very small amounts. But when you start adding large amounts of crypto funds onto those platforms, that's it. You're done and you're lost. But this is all the more reason why you need to just resort to the financial regulator, because they should give you the actual confirmation to tell you whether they have been granted a financial license to operate in the countries. Because ultimately, if they are genuine, they are legit, you should have open access to your funds at any moment in time, including the withdrawal of funds. So that's an important aspect to take into consideration. And then lastly, request for personal information. You should never ever share any information whatsoever, whether it's private keys, your name, your home address where you live, ID numbers, any information, right? You just simply discard that. So these are just examples of best practices on how to help you detect whether these are crypto scams or not. In this guide, we'll make sure you stay protected. Now, the first step is buying Bitcoin. For beginners, I encourage you to use platforms, centralized exchange platforms like Coinbase or even crypto.com, particularly those that are actually authorized and approved by your local jurisdictional financial regulator. Now, this aspect is particularly important for those beginner crypto investors because they will give you guarantees, similar to guarantees that you would have in your bank accounts. That's quite key. So that's the first step. You also need to take into consideration, well, how often would I like to build up my crypto portfolio on those exchanges? Well, there is a recommendation on dollar cost average. It means it would enable investors to buy small amounts, fractional amounts of crypto tokens, whether it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, or any others, to make those acquisitions over time. Now, this helps to reduce risk from price swings. Now, most importantly, you should never leave large amounts of your Bitcoin or other crypto asset holdings on any centralized exchange platforms. Now, let's take the example that you've already set up your crypto wallet on a centralized exchange platform and you've already made some purchase of, let's say, Bitcoin. Now you need to secure the place to store it. Hot wallets like Blue Wallet or Moom are pretty much good for daily use, but they're still connected to the internet, which makes them vulnerable. For long-term security, however, hardware wallets like Ledger and Trezor are the best. Now, I actually own both of them, and you can see it here. This is white one is Trezor. It's only cost me 40 euros, and I have a Ledger device. This is a Nano X Ledger device, and between both, and I'm actually a user of both, they're very, very secure. You may want to look into other hardware wallet vendors, but for me, Ledger and Trezor are the best. For me, bottom line, the best way to actually store the majority of your holdings, you should consider using a hardware wallet, a cold wallet for storage. You need to then worry about downloading the official sources of the software app that will help you to manage the Ledger device or the Trezor device via the software apps, which you can easily install both on your laptop or on your mobile device, right? I use actually the both versions to manage the holdings through each of these two devices. You need to set up either a 12 or a 24 word recovery phrase, and you need to write this down. And very, very importantly, it's not just a question of writing it down on a piece of paper. For heaven's sake, don't do that. You need to write it down and store it. My advice would be in two ways, or at least consider these two options to keeping the 12 or 24 word recovery phrase. You can either use a password vault. In my case, I use NordPass, but there are other leading software vendors that will take care of holding all of your critical and highly sensitive passwords on the software or the virtual password vault. And also, in my case, I've actually included this sensitive information in my will and testament. Now, you need to enable two-factor authentication for extra security, and you should always test small amounts of transfer from your centralized exchange to your designated cold hardware wallet before actually moving lump sums amounts. Now, moving on to step 4, how to store Bitcoin securely or other crypto assets securely. You should never ever hold large amounts on centralized exchange platforms. It's always sound advice that you should keep very small amounts on your crypto holdings on such centralized exchange platforms like crypto.com, Binance, or even Coinbase for your day-to-day crypto investments. You should offload the majority of your crypto asset holdings definitely onto the cold hardware wallet store. So that's the first point. And like I said, on the second point, use your hardware wallet for that long-term storage, but it comes with that responsibility, which is outlined here and also mentioned earlier on. Keeping multiple backups of your recovery phrase in those off-site locations, and also consider using multi-signature wallets for additional security. Now, this last point I haven't actually used because it's still in its infancy. I know there's various vendors out there. You may want to look into that, but nevertheless, anyone can start using cold hardware wallet stores for that long-term storage, because ultimately it is the best way to secure your holdings in the long term, but it comes with that responsibility. And there's various ways to mitigate that responsibility in the case things were go wrong, because at the end of the day, if you lose your recovery phrase, no keys, no cryptos, right? So that is the point. And you need to really have confidential means to make secure backup copies of your recovery phrase in different places. In my case, as I said, I use the password vault and the will and testament held in a local notary. Between the two, for me at this moment in time, it's enough. And I can certainly tell you that after having gone through this, I can sleep well at night. And that's the point. Now, what are the advanced security tips? Things like using passphrase for extra protection on hardware wallets. And I've made a point about multi-signature wallets, which are like multi-chain approvals whenever you're engaged in moving transfers from one crypto wallet address into another. But like I said, it's very, very complex for my own needs. But industry leaders are advocating multi-signature wallets. So maybe it might be something of interest to you to investigate. But for me, I like to keep it simple under my strict control and not by a third-party multi-signature wallet provider. And of course, you have finally offline transactions, which provide that ultimate security. Well, that's just for your FYI to investigate. And lastly, just to wrap up this episode, by buying Bitcoin and crypto assets is very easy. But as you get into the habit of making these purchases, whether it's on a centralized exchange platform like crypto.com or Coinbase or Binance, or even using a hardware wallet like Ledger or Trezor, you rapidly come to the conclusion that securing it is essential, right? So you need to use trusted centralized exchange platforms for beginner crypto investors to start out with. But at some point, you need to think about moving the majority of your crypto holdings onto a hardware called wallet, a store. And importantly, never please share your private keys. You know, that 24-word recovery phrase. And if you decide to add an digital passphrase, the combination of which will give you that ultimate security and indeed peace of mind. Start off, as I said before, with small transactions when you're moving crypto holdings from one crypto wallet into another, just to make sure it's arrived in the other end without any problems before you actually increase the holding values in those transfers at a later stage. You need to build up your knowledge and confidence. That's the bottom line. That's all I have for you for today. If you value clarity on Bitcoin, blockchain technology, and real assets tokenization, stay alert. Subscribe and enable all notifications to stay ahead of the curve. Share this episode with those who need to understand what's coming, friends, family, and colleagues. This channel aims to deliver insight, no noise, and no hype. Subscribe now.